Jay here, Stretford Paddock. This is a one-on-one interview, and joining me is Mark Odgen from ESPN. How's it going, mate? You good?
I'm good, Jay, yeah. Now that I've dried off.
Yeah, now you dried off. Typical Manchester weather. How's your week been? Been all right?
It's been good, yeah. I'm glad that the Premier League's back, because none of us like international football, do we? I was at Wembley on Monday night, and first half was so bad, I thought, I don't want to do England again. Second half was better, but it's just not the same. There's no intensity. You miss that kind of edge that the Premier League gives. So even those journalists, we miss the Premier League. So just can't wait for it to come back at the weekend of the derby.
And we're just talking off camera. Where was it you've been? Was it Austria you've been as well?
Yeah, so I was in Austria last week. Basically, I was watching Iran. So the idea was to watch England's first opponents and the USA, because obviously they work for ESPN, so, you know, they're in the same group. And the idea was just to get an idea of what they were like. But the events in Iran over the last week or so have just obviously much bigger than football. You know, women being, well, assaulted, killed, protests in the streets, you know, women removing the hijab, women cutting the hair. So this game that was just about football became much bigger than that, and to the point where the day before the game, the Iranian FA banned the media, me included, from doing the game because they didn't want protests, or they didn't want the coverage. Right. So we protested against the protest, basically, and we managed to get in. Carlos Queiroz kind of helped a little bit because he's their coach now. Yeah. And we got in the game, but the game was overshadowed a bit. There were protests, people were thrown out for protesting. So I know I'm going to get onto the Harry Maguire stuff in a bit, but it felt like while a lot was kicking off, I was doing this kind of proper job, actually, reporting on something that's kind of serious and much bigger than football. And it was like the kind of the contrast between the madness of football and social media and the reality of this massive situation that is much bigger than football was going on, and I was kind of reporting and hopefully kind of educating and informing people of what's going on, because I didn't know anything about or much of what was going on in Iran. And then we came back and we had this situation where this great story that was told, and the situation over there is really bad. So being a journalist, you want to shed light on things and tell people what they don't know, and I did that last week, and I felt that was a proper job. Other days it's not so much like that. Other days it's more, you know, who's playing, who's injured, who doesn't like who, etc., etc. It's
good though that, you know, football can help to educate people around that, because, you know, a lot of people will have found out, and not as mad as it seems, what is going on, or you know, what's happening around, because off the back of things like that, the process of the football and the clips, some of the clips we've seen from that game. Yeah,
that's it. I mean, I do feel sorry for the Iranian players, because I don't think any team in the World Cup will have the same amount of pressure on that they have, because they're having to play for. I mean, I was told that the Iranian regime basically controls the football team, and I mean, you can imagine. In the game that I wasn't at, they played Senegal this week in Austria as well, and all the players wore black tops and covered the Iranian badge. It was a collective protest. I thought it was so brave.
I was going to say, it's very courageous.
It's so brave for them to do, because, you know, sports people have been not only arrested in Iran, they've been executed. And again, these things I found out, that there's one guy, a wrestler, he was arrested in, I think, the last protest, 2016, 17, and they ended up charging him with murder and organising a protest, and he said he was tortured into making the confession, but he was executed. So I think this is the situation. We've got England playing in the first game in the World Cup, so it brought it back to why was I there, to talk about the football, but also talk about, actually, there's a lot more going on, and this is quite scary. So yeah, the Iranian players, the pressure they must be under, especially the ones that play in Iran, but even the ones that don't, they've got family in Iran, and so to do that protest, they're putting themselves in danger and their family. So massive bravery and, you know, massive respect for them for doing that.
It does seem like, going into the World Cup as well, just to talk about it briefly, like, there is a lot of talk about protests and the human rights element, and, you know, we've seen it with some of the comments from the England camp and stuff as well about, like, you know, the rainbow armbands and stuff like that. What have you made of all that, and the fact that we are, you know, going into the World Cup, that's probably, I mean, you might, you know, think differently, one of the most controversial we've ever had?
Well, I was in Qatar about 2 or 3 weeks ago, because I went to do a kind of an assessment as to where they're up to and if they're ready or not, and they're not, basically.
Right.
But you're right about the protest. I mean, I think Denmark have done the kit manufacturer, Hummel, the understated kit. I mean, I think, you know, I do think that some of the England stuff is a little bit kind of for the public consumption. Oh, we must be doing something. What can we do?
Yeah.
They're not doing enough. I mean, the England players are very reluctant to talk out about it. I mean, some of the England team are very kind of vocal about issues. Yeah. Raheem Sterling, Marcus Rashford, obviously Marcus hasn't been in the squad recently. You know, Harry Kane, all these big high-profile players. I'm sure they've got an opinion on what's happened in Qatar and the whole build-up to it, but they're not really allowed to say it. And I think that's a shame. I think, the grown men, the multimillionaires, they've got a sense of independence that a lot of people don't have to say what they think. And wearing an armband, it's almost like it's been dreamt up in a PR suite. Like, what can we do that makes us look like we're doing something? And it's not enough. No. It'd be interesting. I mean, this is going back way before my time and yours, but Johan Cruyff boycotted the World Cup in '78 because he didn't agree with the regime in Argentina. So, missed the World Cup with the Dutch, got to the final loss. But imagine if a player as big as Cruyff now said, "I'm not going to the World Cup."
Yeah.
But there's so many layers to it, and the Qataris will say that we're not doing this for sports washing, we're doing this for that different reasons or whatever. But we can't get away from the fact that a lot of people have died while building the stadiums and building Qatar. It's still a building site. All the stadiums are ready, but the actual Doha itself, it's a building site, and it's being built by a lot of migrant workers. So there are big issues there. But it's LGBT rights, these things that women's rights. These things that in Qatar are totally different to over here. So I think football has a responsibility to shed a light on that. And I wish the players would be a little bit more independent of thinking, because they do all have their own opinions. And like I say, they're not like me and you, that the England players, that many of them wouldn't have to work a day again in their life if they gave their opinion, because they're wealthy for the rest of their lives. They shouldn't feel the pressure of the association or the organisation that they're playing for, because they have a profile that allows them to have a massive impact on what is said. And like we said about the Iran players before, if one of the England players, one of the big England players, came out and said something that I'm disgusted by the LGBT rights, or I don't want to go to Qatar because of this, it would have a massive impact. But they don't want to go there. I understand why. Nobody wants to be the first to do it. Nobody wants to damage their prospects of getting a good boot deal or a kit deal. I understand that totally. It takes a lot of bravery to come out and be the first voice, but wearing an armband, I just think that's just, again, that's an exercise in PR, which I'm not a massive fan of, to be honest.
No, I'm with you. It does feel a little bit performative, and I agree. And, you've seen Erik Cantona recently speaking out against it, but even ex-players have been pretty quiet, haven't they? And you do wonder how much of it is they don't want to scare off sponsors, or I get it with players though, because it's it's a World Cup and they want to go, and I understand that. But it would be good to see if more people spoke out. Going back to the Premier League, as you mentioned, it's the derby, obviously, this weekend. Bit of a boost, if you can call it that, for Manchester United. Erik Ten Hag's one player, manager of the month. Marcus Rashford as one player of the month. What have you made of the turnaround from those first couple of Premier League games this season? Where I don't know about you, but I felt like Ralph Rangnick 2.0 at one point to where we are now, where we've obviously hit a bit of form and got some big results.
It was really bad after the Brentford game. I was away at the time. I was on holiday, and I landed after the game. I was like, what? 4-0 at Brentford? And then you hear about it was 4-0 at half time. It was so bad, and I was kind of alarmed and concerned for United at that point, because I thought that they hadn't brought enough players in. The De Jong thing was dragging on forever, and then you hear Arnautovic mentioned and Rabiot, and it's like, what on earth is going on?
Yeah.
Because they're not Man United players.
No.
Not in a million years. And if United are looking at those players, it's a panic buy. So the fact that Ten Hag has spotted what was going wrong, made some big calls, dropped Maguire, didn't start Ronaldo when he had to, when he came back. And I just think, fair play, I think for the first time since Ferguson left, United have got a coach that isn't burdened by the Ferguson legacy.
Right.
Because Moyes was the chosen one. Van Gaal was the one to make up for the mess left behind by the chosen, just a year after Fergie left, and he was regarded as like the big personality that United needed, and he was always judged against Fergie. Obviously Mourinho was like Fergie's, not Fergie's mate, but he had that connection, and Ole was just Fergie's clone he wanted to be, but it was nothing like it. And he kept going on about the manager. Ten Hag's got no association with Ferguson whatsoever, no association, doesn't owe him anything, and it's a clean slate. And I think that helps in the sense that he can make his own decisions. And the fact he made some big decisions early, and obviously it's paid off with the way that the teams have played. The Liverpool game, they were brilliant. The Arsenal game, they were really good as well. I think it's given him a lot of strength now. And I think the fact that they lost those two games has helped him in the sense to make the big calls, to assert his personality and say, look, I'm the boss. If you don't like it, tough. By basically getting rid of Luke Shaw in a sense. Obviously, Malassia's been great. Wan-Bissaka's gone.
Yeah.
So he's made some very big calls, and I think there's more to come. I think there's some big calls to come as well that he hasn't been able to do yet. But I think he's now got that authority to do it. And I don't think any of the managers since Fergie have had that authority. They haven't earned it. Even Mourinho, they hadn't earned that chance to say, my team, this is what I'm doing, like it or lump it. And I think the fans are totally behind him because they've had enough of 10 years of just, bad decisions from every level of the club. Every level, owner, chief exec, manager, players. I think he's now the guy that's in control. And I think that you can see it on the pitch. You can actually see the players know they've got a boss now.
Yeah.
That was never the case under Solskjaer. It wasn't. I mean, I know the fans love Ole Solskjaer, and I can see why. But the players took the piss.
Yeah. I think Scholes has said that recently on the overlap I think he was on.
They knew.
Literally said those words.
He never looked like the boss. He didn't really spend enough time on the touchline. He's on the touchline giving orders. And I think the players now know that he's the boss. And that makes a massive difference because if the boss doesn't like you or the boss doesn't pick you, then you've got to prove him wrong. And I think it's great to have that sense of authority there now that hasn't been there for too long.
Ultimately, I know it's a big question, but do you think he can have success at United, Erik Ten Hag? Because, you mentioned there, Van Gaal, loads of success elsewhere. Jose, loads of success elsewhere. I think the difference was those weren't managers on the rise where Ten Hag is. Do you think that he could be successful at United?
I think he's got a better chance than most. And I think you're right. Van Gaal, he was so much yesterday's man. It was untrue. I mean, he came... That was a mistake of Ed Woodward and the owners, that they thought that Van Gaal was the guy to go to. He hadn't been in club management for 4 years. And he'd won the Champions League, 15, 20 years earlier. Yeah. So Mourinho was burnt out by the time he got United. I know he won 2 trophies, but he was an angry man. He wasn't the same for Mourinho that we saw at Chelsea and at Inter Milan. So this guy is a guy that, yes, he's on the way up. He's got that burning ambition to do something, to achieve something. So I do think he can win at United, but I do think that I think fans have got to be patient, and I know that they're likely to be patient this time because it was so much hollowed out last season. Last season was so bad that I think the sense of realism came in. But with patience, there's also that desire to win. And I think with Ten Hag, I think this season they're not going to win the league this season. Let's be honest, they're not.
No.
If he gets top 4 and wins a cup, I think that's a brilliant season.
Yeah, I'd say that.
There's a progression there, and I think. But also, it goes in cycles. So Liverpool, have Liverpool hit their summit now? Are they beginning to decline a bit?
I hope so.
If Pep leaves City at the end of the season, what happens there? So clubs rise at the same time as other clubs kind of descend, as we saw with City and United 10 years ago. So maybe United at the start of that rise, but he does need a lot more backing from the club in terms of players. That I think that they need a centre forward, a goalkeeper, and a proper midfielder, I think. And they're big signings, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like Liverpool have got a centre forward, City have, Tottenham have. The big clubs have got a centre forward, a goal scorer that's going to score 20 or 25 goals a season. They need a midfielder that can dominate. That might be Jude Bellingham, it might be Declan Rice. They haven't got that. And I think they need a goalkeeper that can dominate that defence for the next 10 years. I don't think De Gea can do that anymore. I think they need an Edison or Alisson Becker type, somebody that will just give them that strength of spine. And so that's 3 massive signings, but he needs to be backed to bring them in.
You mentioned there Jude Bellingham, and I agree. I think we do need some big signings, and Bellingham's a name that's been bandied about quite a lot. Obviously, we've seen what he's done for Dortmund and for England, and he's 19 years old, however old he is, 18, 19. He's still very young. Do you think United could go for Bellingham in the summer? I don't obviously see it happening in January, but do you think that's a player that could end up at Old Trafford? Because other clubs are obviously looking at him. Well,
I mean, they tried to get him 2 years ago when he went to Dortmund, and they were very close to getting him, but I just don't think that United had the. I think that Bellingham and his family and his people have a plan, and that is to go to Germany to learn the ropes. I think he could have come to United, and I think they might have felt that it would have been lost amidst. I mean, if he'd have come to United at 17 in that team under Solskjaer, which was all over the place, what would he have developed? Probably not. So I think end of this season is where he moves on. And I think who the rival's going to be. There's going to be Liverpool. There's going to be City, maybe Chelsea. But I think it's United, City or Liverpool that'll get him. I think City have always got with the favourites. They've got the money. They'll be winning. They'll have won something at the end of this season. They'll be the team that's right at the peak then. But United could be the team that's on the way up. And I think some of the fees that I've seen for Bellingham, you're looking at £140 million. I think that might price Liverpool out of it.
Yeah.
And Liverpool, where they're going to be next summer, they've got a big rebuilding job in midfield. If you look at their midfielders, they're either all in the 30s or they're all, apart from Fabinho, kind of injury prone. So maybe it boils down to United and City because of the costs involved, and then it just depends on personal choice whether City want to do the deal if Pep's still there. But I think United have got to be in the frame. But there's Declan Rice as well, who's another one that...
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned him, and he's a name that sort of, again, has been reported on for going back about 3 years with United. These links have been sort of, doing the rounds for quite a long time. Do you think there's, again, a real solid interest there from United point of view?
Yeah, there has been an interest. And, I mean, I was told last season that there was an interest there, but there was a kind of a belief within the coaching setup at the time that he just wasn't quite at United's level.
Right.
I think the problem is at times United still scout and act like the 2008 team were the best team in Europe.
Yeah.
I think Declan Rice might not have got in that team, but he's certainly getting this one.
Yeah.
And I think that he would be... See, I think they should have... For the finance it costs to get Casimiro in terms of fee and wages, you're probably looking at about £140 million over 3-4 year contract. He's 30 to 31. You could have got Declan Rice for the same package,
right.
And Declan Rice could have been in your midfield for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I think next summer with Rice, I think he'll be into the final year of his contract next year. And again, I've been told that this will boil down to United or Chelsea, because City have got other options. Bellingham, they've already got Rodri, they've got Calvin Phillips. Liverpool haven't really kind of shown a massive interest in Rice. Tottenham and Arsenal not on the radar because they just don't go for that sort of fee for a player, and so it's down to United and Chelsea. So where are Chelsea going to be next summer? Are they going to be in the Champions League? There's a lot of kind of bits have got to fall into place. It depends where the clubs are at the time, what sort of money situation is, who the manager is. But I think United are in a good position at this stage to get one of Bellingham or Rice. They won't get both. But let's hope that they've got that ability to do what a lot of clubs do, certainly like City and Liverpool do, is get in there now and get the deal done before, do the groundwork. Don't leave it till June or July. You've got to start doing these deals now. But I do think that is a priority. It was a priority this summer. When they were looking at Darwin Núñez and Liverpool beat them to Núñez, I was told right then, that was in June, priority is central midfielder. And nothing happened until mid-August because they spent so long looking for De Jong. So
yeah, it was crackers what went on this summer, because it was just like you say, the whole Rabiot out of it thing, and then next thing you know, we're buying Casimiro and paying €100 million for Ante. It just seems so haphazard.
Absolutely, because they spent so long wanting to get De Jong, and I think De Jong is a very good player, but I'm not sure he is what United need. Right? I mean, he plays a bit in Spain. He's got all the time in the world to pick a pass and to he's got the space. It's not a very fast and aggressive game. He's a great player, Dion, but I think in the Premier League, whether his credentials would make United better than a Bellingham or Rice, I'm not sure. Because obviously you've got Christian Eriksen in the mix now, who's been brilliant.
Yeah, he has.
So I don't know where De Jong, Eriksen and Fernandes fit in. I think you probably need a midfielder that is more likely to be happy to sit there, win the ball, pass the ball to the top players. So for me, I think the De Jong ship should have sailed, and it should be like Bellingham or Rice now, because look at the ages of them as well. They're both like young.
They've got to get past Scott McTominay to get in that team. He's on fire at the minute.
Well,
I didn't think I'd be sat here talking about Casemiro being on the bench and McTominay starting, but
McTominay,
what have you made of him so far? McTominay, he's just...
I think McTominay is a great athlete, box to box, but I do think that he's limited in the sense that as a creator, but that's not what he's there to do.
Yeah.
There were times last year when I was watching him thinking, somebody's just got to get hold of him and say, you don't have to crash into somebody in the first 10 minutes. Yeah. Calm down. Use your head a bit more. Yeah. I think he can be a bit over aggressive at times. I think he does that maybe to try and, I don't know, to please the fans or to show that he's contributing. But I think sometimes he has to, a bit more experience will say, don't put in that clattering tackle. Yeah. Sit back. But I think, if you're going to win the league or win a big trophy, you need a squad, and he'd be part of that squad. I don't think a Champions League winning team is going to have Scott McTominay in it, but he's in the squad. Maybe he's a modern day Darren Fletcher.
People have said that, and I get that. I understand that argument.
And you need that. Yeah. You need that ability to rotate and to move players around like Fergie did. You can't just keep having the same two midfielders. Because I don't think Casemiro is going to play every game.
No.
He's hardly played a game, has he?
No, he's not. I think he's like you say, I think he's starting in the Europa games, but he's been mainly a sub, hasn't he?
Yeah.
In the Premier League. But I think eventually you expect him, like you said, with the package that was put together to get him here, the fact he's a 5 times Champions League winner, you'd expect him to start. I'm going to ask you about Harry Maguire. We mentioned it earlier because I'm sure you noticed the article you did on Maguire caused a bit of a... I don't know what you can call it, on a meltdown almost on social media. A lot of people picked up on the quotes. I just wanted to sort of clarify, because there seems to be confusion in that with what was coming from someone you spoke to and what was your opinion, because some people thought, is this your opinion on Maguire sort of saying that he's struggling because he's playing in front of De Gea, or that someone like Diaz would struggle in this United team, or is this coming from someone you've spoke to?
Yeah,
it's the sort of situation.
Yeah, it's come from somebody I spoke to, and somebody, without giving too much away, it's somebody that knows Maguire and has worked with in the past, and identified a problem and told me this is the situation that he'd been made aware of.
Yeah.
Now, to be honest, it does kind of tally with what I think, because I think that De Gea at times gets away with a lot, when I think that some of the fans have a bit of a blind spot to him. But you don't go around writing pieces that agree with your opinion. You write pieces that you get the information to write it. Now, what surprised me was that obviously there was a bit of a delayed reaction to this, because I published that piece on a Monday, and nobody said boo to a goose until Wednesday, and all of a sudden it was like, Jesus, what's going on here?
Because I saw it and I thought, when I saw the date, because I saw the sort of the reaction to it, hang on a minute, this is from a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I think that the thing that winds me up a bit, and certainly other journalists, is that fans have this impression that that sort of story comes from the player or the player's camp or whatever. Now, I've met Harry Maguire once. I've interviewed him once, and that was about 2 years ago. I don't know him. Yeah. I don't have any particular loyalty towards him. If somebody said to me the same sort of things about Victor Lindelof, I'd have written the same piece. Yeah. So the situation is that I think fans think that you just go to the PR team, so what's this, and they leak it out. They ring you, so we need this out. The last people you go to if you want to get the truth or the inside information is the club PR or the players' PR, because all they're going to tell you is what they want you to hear. So it's people that haven't got that kind of pressure on them to, what can we put out today, that are the best source of information. People, I think nowadays, not just in football, in sport, in politics, everything, there's too many people that will take what is told to them by the PR people and write that as gospel. Yeah. The reality is you have to find out from people that aren't involved in the PR, because that's how you get the reality. Because a PR team just wants their message out there. Now, I don't think that this came out very well for Harry Maguire, so why would his PR team tell you something that's going to backfire on him? It was just, that is the reality of what I was told. And I think it was out of order for people to target Maguire, to suggest that Maguire's been leaking this, Maguire's been leaking that. Well, that's not the case. Yeah. And I don't understand why people think that it must have come from Maguire or his camp. So, and I was getting stick. First of all, I was getting stick for turning Maguire over and knifing Maguire, and also being Maguire's mouthpiece. So it can't be both. Yeah. I think it basically, if you write something that goes against somebody's opinion, they'll have a go at you because it doesn't tally with their opinion. But that's just the nature of the business, that you write things that are uncomfortable at times for people. I was surprised, to be honest, because, like I say, nothing came of it for a couple of days, and all of a sudden it caught fire. But on an international week, nothing happens anyway, because there's no football, there's no proper football, there's no Premier League football, so the agenda doesn't move on, and it just kind of sat there like a weather system. It was like this big grey cloud for a couple of days. But I saw some of the fan stuff online. It was like some of them, I suppose, people that have got big platforms are like talking about, Maguire leaking to Ogden. It's like, no.
You spoke to someone who's worked with him in the past or whatever.
And I'm pretty sure that Harry Maguire wouldn't even know that this guy's been speaking to me. Right. I certainly wouldn't be doing it on Harry Maguire's behalf. No. I didn't get a call saying, do you fancy a coffee today? Because I've got something to tell you that Harry wants me to get it out. Don't work like that. Yeah. Some people can be indiscreet and not know what they're telling you. Yeah. And that is the way it works, unfortunately.
Just quickly before we wrap up, where do you think, just on Maguire, what do you think lies where do you think the future lies? Sorry, for Harry Maguire. Do you think he can turn this around at United? Because he's been getting stick for England, which I'm not overly concerned about. As a United fan, I can sort of take it or leave it with England, and I've seen it in the past with no disrespect, but bigger players than Harry Maguire. But at United, things aren't going great for him. Obviously you've covered it extensively. Do you think he can or will turn this around, or do you think this is sort of could be the beginning and the end for his time at United?
I think a bit of both. He can turn it around, but I think it is the beginning of the end, because, what is he, 29?
Yeah.
Let's be honest, Varane isn't going to play every game. He can't. We saw that last season. He isn't able to play all the games that are out there. I think so far he has, because we had that big gap because of the Queen dying. So I think but for that, Maguire would have played a little bit more. Yeah. So Maguire or Martinez may get injured. Yeah. So he'll have to come back in, because it's either him or Lindelof. So the options aren't great. So he will get games to play, but he's not playing well. He was awful for England the other night against Germany, really bad. But I think that's
for him because he needed a good game.
Yeah, and the thing is, I do feel for Maguire, look, because he's a good lad, and I think the fans need to be aware of this. He don't go out of the pitch wanting to play really badly.
No,
he don't want to go out of the pitch to let people down. I think he does care. I think at the minute he's probably caring too much because he came on against Arsenal. It was like, oh God, there's mistakes everywhere. So he's the world's most experienced defender, but he's not the world's best defender. Let's be honest. But I just think he has to find a way to just get his form back. But United paid over the odds for him. He's got the armband, which he probably shouldn't have. He's not a leader in that sense. So I just think there's got to be kind of a recalibration of expectations with Maguire and from himself as well. But right now, as it stands, the number 2 defenders are Martinez and Varane. But like I say, there will come a point where he plays. But I just don't think he's good enough for Man United, ultimately.
Fair enough. Just one final question. I want to ask you this before I let you go. The Glazers, we've heard reports about maybe they'd be open to selling, that Joel's the one that's reluctant to sell. Do you see the Glazers anytime soon selling up, or do you think they're making too much money out of Manchester United Football Club to give it up? Give it up, but sell it up.
I don't see him selling anytime soon. I did a big piece on them the other week just to kind of get into all that and to find out what the situation is. And the reality is that they do need to borrow money. They need to find some money to pay for the rebuild, and they're committed to that. You're looking at 250 million pounds. How they're going to do that is the question, because no wealthy billionaire is going to say to the Glazers, there you go, there's some investment and do what you want with it.
No.
They're going to want a say, and the Glazers aren't in that position yet where they want to give a say. My concern is that they'll do what Barcelona did and basically sell off their future TV rights.
All those levers that Barcelona were pulling every week. Yeah.
And then try and do it that way to retain a control, because financially they are feeling the pinch right now. I mean, everybody is, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Borrowing 6 months ago was a lot cheaper for the Glazers. Borrowing now, if you want to get a mortgage, they've got to get a massive mortgage at the same sort of rate. So it's going to cost them a lot of money. But they know if they can cling on to United, and they are clinging on, if they can cling on in a year or two's time, the club will be worth a lot more, because the football clubs that... One kind of downside at the moment, some of the City analyst was telling me this, a downside of what's been going on in the world in the last 18 months, 2 years, 18 months, is that really, really wealthy people have got a lot wealthier. So they've got money swilling around to put into projects like this. So we saw this with Chelsea. When Chelsea was up for sale, so many American kind of personalised private equity funds were coming in to buy the club because the money was there.
Yeah.
One of the groups that failed to buy Chelsea was the Ricketts Group. They owned the Chicago Cubs. They were backed by a guy that's worth £30 billion. So that sort of money's out there. So the Jim Ratcliffe thing, I know it appeals to fans that he's a Manchester guy, he's a United fan, but there's people out there that are a lot richer than Jim Ratcliffe, groups that are a lot richer. And what you probably end up with, and the Glazers know this, the minute they put the club on the market, they'll be getting twice as much that Chelsea went for, because it's Man United. Yeah. So they don't have to sell yet. If they wanted to sell, they'd sell now, because there's people banging the door down to buy the club.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if and when the club is sold, it'll just go to another American ownership group, a bit like the Glazers, but that won't take the money out. But look at Chelsea. Chelsea look a little bit of a mess right now. They've got American owners that have come up with these big ideas, but you're not going to get perfect owners, basically, no matter who it is. No. But they'll be better than these.
Yeah, I think anyone will be in a, I think there's the protests against them are going to continue until they eventually do go, hopefully sooner rather than later. Matt, it's been great chatting to you. Go and check out ESPN. Anything big coming up at the minute, or just covering the derby and other stuff?
Covering the derby. Done a piece today which might wind people up about Lisandro Martinez, basically saying that he's not too small to mark Erling Haaland out of the game. But I've already had people saying, what do you mean he's not too small? Why is it always about his height? It's a piece about how his height won't go against him, but people don't read past the headlines.
We don't want to get into the bother of reading the article.
Read
we just
past
want
the
to
headline.
See the first few words,
yeah.
And then, do you know what I mean? I don't even make it to the headline usually. I just see what it's about.
Well, this is the thing.
Showing my outrage.
This is the thing. Can I say this? Writers, journalists don't do the headlines, and fans don't understand it. But
we had Dave McDonald on. Do you remember Dave McDonald, the one? The 50 million waste of money with the Matt Shalwell.
What a waste of money. There's people in the offices whose job is to write headlines. It's got nothing to do with us. The amount of times that you go into the office saying, what have you done that for? Don't even make any sense. And who gets it in the neck? I get it in the neck, or somebody else. But read past the headline and then come at me all you want. If you've read it and you need 800 words, you don't agree with it, but don't just judge me on the headline.
At least read it before you start kicking off. But
yeah.
I agree with that. I think Martinez has done well. I think his height has just been over-exaggerated, all the issues around that. Just everyone's just losing their mind. Mark, it's been great chatting to you. Make sure you go and check out Mark Ogden on ESPN. Make sure as well you are subscribing to Stretford Paddock. Hit that subscribe button. This has been a one-on-one interview with Mark Ogden. I've been Jay Motti. Thanks for watching.